evening. This is the meeting of the leadership team. Before we start the meeting, I'd just like to give you an idea of how I'm going to run the meeting. We're going to run the meeting following, well, in accordance with the Council standing orders and the protocol and procedures for remote meetings, which was adopted at the full Council on the 20th of May 2020. What I'm going to say is if my computer fails, I've got a spare one, but if both go down, then I nominate Kim Taylor-Smith to be the chair in my absence until I can fix any technical difficulties. Just to say, could you please all keep your microphones off unless you're speaking? And could you also please keep your videos off unless you're speaking? So when you come to speak, you can turn your cameras on and turn the mics on. Otherwise, everything should be off. If you have questions, can you either raise your hands or even better, put a Q in the chat. The chat won't be used for chatting because people who are at home can't see what you're saying. So anything that you want to say, please say it publicly and just put a question. And if I fail to answer, I've asked Anna to sort of nudge me remotely. As for the questions, what I'll do on each item, I'll ask lead members to ask any questions, and before I then open it up. And I will open it up to the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Councillor Rossi, who's in the room. And then I understand that Councillor Mason, who's leader of the Labour group, is here, Councillor Press and Councillor Bakhtiar. But I will ask comments from the leadership team first. Okay, with that, I would just like to say, I think we should start our meeting as we always do with 72-second silence. And can you please make sure that there is nothing which will interfere with your phone's not to go off or anything like that. Okay, Anna, if you could start us with our 72-second silence to remember those who sadly lost their lives in the Grenfell Tower tragedy.
It's started now. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, apologies for absence. I believe I've only got apologies from Councillor Anne Siren, who's not here. Is it worth going through the people who are here so people who are seeing it from home can know who they are? So when I call your name, can you just turn your camera on and say present or something? So, Kim Taylor-Smith.
Present.
Sarah Addenbrook.
Present.
Catherine Folkes.
Present.
Jem Kamali.
Present.
Josh Rendell.
Here.
Johnny Thalasites.
Present.
Mary Wheel.
Present.
And Emma Well. Present. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of interest? No, thank you. And the minutes of the leadership team meeting held on the 16th of September 2020 can I take your assent that they're a true and accurate record? Thank you. So I will virtually sign them then. Thank you very much. Let us go then to paper A4, which is the new council tax reduction scheme. Councillor Wheel, would you like to introduce this, please?
Yes, I mean, in a sense, this is quite a complicated and technical paper, but in another sense, it's a very simple paper in that we have been since 2013 running our own council tax reduction scheme rather than the government. And within that, we have some flexibility. We don't have to fund 100% relief. We could fund less than that, but we have chosen since 2013 to fund the full amount, which in the next year we think will cost the borough £13.1 million. But it's an important way of supporting low-income households. The reason that we've got this paper is the introduction of universal credit, because universal credit is a much more sensitive beast than the previous benefit systems, and some residents of the borough have moved to universal credit and some are still on the old benefit system. But it's become increasingly apparent that our way of administering and responding to this to application of this credit has made it difficult, could make it difficult for households as their incomes move around a bit more than they would do on the old benefit system. So what we're suggesting here is that we introduce a new banding system from which no one will be worse off and some people will be better off to cope with that, and along with that a new computer system to administer it. The good thing about it is that it means that we can take feeds directly off what the Department of Work Pension Centres and make sure that it all is accurate and done in a timely way for residents, so they have a bit more certainty about what income they're going to achieve. And I think really it's as simple as that, but the detail is much more complicated. And I know that we've got Sophie and Paul here to help with any of the more technical questions.
Okay, and can I open this up to the leadership team? Any questions that you might have?
I have a question, Leader, if that's okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor. I think it's a really good paper, a really good thing that we're kind of trying to achieve this. My only question, I think, is why haven't we tried to achieve this earlier? Because I know it's a concern of many residents about this.
Because people are slowly moving over to universal credit. And not everybody moved over at once. So it just makes sense now the volume is such that it makes sense to move over to this newer banding system.
Thank you.
And it'll only apply to those, on universal credit.
Councillor Folks?
Thank you, Mary. While I absolutely welcome this scheme, which I do, we're very worried that obviously with COVID, there will be a huge number, unfortunately, of people who will go on to universal credit. We've already seen a large increase, and that coupled with people moving over to universal credit from other banded schemes, will that mean that actually the cost to the council will be a lot more than stated in this paper or not? And have you put that in?
There will be an increase, but we don't. The modelling is that we won't get that many more universal credit claimants, partly because of the furlough provision, and also because COVID, with luck, should only be a temporary phenomenon, even if longer than we would all hope. But maybe that's something that Paul would like to come in on and clarify.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly our prediction. So we estimate there's about 12,000 people who are on furlough in the borough, but it's important to bear in mind that only a small percentage of those will be liable for council tax. So they will be householders living with somebody who is liable for council tax. So it's very unlikely that even the majority of those will go on to claim council tax reduction simply because they won't be liable for council tax. But it is possible if the economy doesn't improve dramatically or gets significantly worse, that we'll have an increase in council tax reduction claims.
Thank you. Kim Taylor-Smith, Councillor Taylor-Smith.
Hello, yes, thank you. Just reading the GLA letter accompanying the paper, and it talks about providing information on the schemes as clearly as possible. And I know these obviously are complex things, and I just wondered if you could maybe outline a little bit in terms of how we're going to communicate this to our residents.
Paul, would you like to come in on that one?
Certainly, yeah. So as part of the consultation, we obviously contacted those residents who are currently in receipt of council tax reductions and will be impacted. And we again intend to write to residents, if this is agreed, just to outline exactly what that will mean for them, and also offer a helpline for someone to give us a call to find out by speaking to someone what impact this will have. So we do intend to have a communication package if this is agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from
I
leadership?
think Pat has his hand. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Pat perhaps could wait till after I see whether the rest of the leadership team. Any other questions for the rest of the leadership team? I've got one actually, which was 8.6. I think it was 8.6. It was 9.6. Here we go. 9.6. The extra cost per year to us is £260,000 by 2024. That's an awful lot of money, isn't it? £250,000 just to administer a scheme. But then I see that you are intending for it to be paid. Is that right? By increasing the council tax empty homes premium. Have I got that right?
That's one way of offsetting the cost, but and maybe in future years we will have to look at it again. But I just think, you know, this is a huge cost to the council, but we were originally given the option, and presuming the funding was built in to our bottom line to do this, and it's then been an option about whether we go for the full 100% or offer a discount, and or take a slightly less generous approach. And I think, you know, it'll be up for review every year, like all of our other items of expenditure. But really, I would recommend that we do stick with 100% discount this year. And
absolutely, I wasn't asking about that. I was asking about the cost of administering our scheme, which is 260,000. And then in 9.9, you say that the additional revenue of the empty home stuff can support these increased costs of administering this new scheme.
Yes, I mean it can do, and in a way maybe that's a slightly sort of facile sort of juxtaposition. We're not going to ring fence the council tax empty homes premium for just this job, but it is an example of where we could get the funding from.
Okay. That clarifies that. And tell me about the public consultation.
Paul, do you want to come in and add some colour to that?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing we did, we contacted all of the major advice agencies in the borough to let them know of our proposal. And it's important to bear in mind that we'd received quite detailed feedback from them about some of the problems that was being caused by universal credit and people's changes in circumstances. So that went on the consultation went on for a period of about 6 weeks. We received feedback mainly from CAB, and we worked with them to mitigate some of their concerns. At the same time, or just slightly afterwards, we wrote to I think it's 3,000 residents who are currently in receipt of council tax reduction, just to let them know of the proposal and ask for any feedback, although feedback we had was very, very minimal from that group.
And it's worth saying we consulted the GLA as well.
Yes, that's correct.
And it's their letter. Thank you. Councillor Rossi as chair of the OSC, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Mason. So, Councillor Rossi, you have a question.
Yeah, and Mary, if you could perhaps answer what kind of provision we might have for people who would suddenly lose their jobs, because as I understand it, getting onto universal credit isn't that quick. It takes a few weeks. And if we did get ourselves into the situation where that was happening a lot, how would the council respond? Because people obviously wouldn't be able to pay their council tax if they lost their job.
I don't think this is affected by this paper in a sense. This paper won't affect what goes on at the moment, but perhaps officers would like to explain how long it takes to adjust both to changes in council tax status and whether we backdate it or not.
Okay, so yeah, I'm happy to pick that up. So, and anyone who loses their job and is in receipt of universal credit and is liable to pay their council tax is able to make a claim for council tax reduction. And as soon as someone makes a claim for universal credit, we receive a file from the Department for Work and Pensions telling us that a claim has been made and can we process the council tax reduction. We're finding at the moment there has been quite a significant increase in the processing time. So where before it may have been 3 or 4 weeks in the borough, it's now been turned around within 10 days in over 90% of the case. So when that happens, we'll receive a further correspondence from the Department for Work and Pensions telling us that universal credit is in payment, and then we're processing the claim for council tax reduction.
So I think it's worth just pointing out that the council tax reduction scheme is contingent on somebody being having recourse to public funds, either to benefit normal previous benefits or universal credit, so that our system doesn't kick in until they've proved that they're liable for universal credit.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from you, Councillor Rossi?
No, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Mason, and I know that you submitted a question in advance, for which thank you very much, because then I'm sure our officers will be able to answer the questions. But do you want to pose them anyway, and then they can?
Well, I did that because it would save time here, and as it happens, Mary sent me some answers from the finance officers before this meeting, but I was trying to calculate what it would look like from April 2021, not this year, as one of the questions the officers assumed I was talking about this year, because both the budget and the government, if they give us any more hardship fund money, which of course we're told in one of the answers to my questions, there's no announcement. We are either going to be working on 13,520, the COVID figures, or as somebody I think Councillor Fox just mentioned, we have 12,000 people on furlough, and I'm trying to work out because in November the medium-term financial strategy.
Your question is how will the end of furlough?
Well, no. Yeah. Well, that as well. I've heard the answers. I've heard the answers to that. But in November, the medium-term financial strategy will come to your leadership team, and there'll be an assessment of how many people you expect in the next financial year to be eligible for this scheme, and therefore you'll have a figure in the budget. And if you get it wrong, then the government presumably you're going to have to tell the government how much we're going to pay.
Sorry, Pat, I'm getting confused. What's your question?
Is the figure is the analysis in this paper correct, or is it a much larger figure? Because it seems
correct, Mary.
Because you told the GLA.
So there are two issues here. One is the general number correct, and that is totally separate from this paper, because we're doing the council tax reduction scheme anyway, and this is just altering slightly how we do it and adding to the cost in a small way. Indeed. But nothing compared to the overall cost of the scheme. So I think I'd like officers to comment on how robust or they feel their figures are, but really in a sense it doesn't alter the decision whether to move to a banding system or not, because that's tinkering around the edges slightly. Paul, would you like to talk again about those figures in your projection?
Yeah. Hello, Councillor Mason. Yes, the forecast that we provided is based on real data, and it's data that the most up-to-date data that we regularly each month have to provide to MHCLG. And in making that forecast, we anticipate that there is going to be an increase in October and the first part of November in our caseload, but then we've estimated that it's going to plateau out for the rest of the year, and that's pretty much in common with most London authorities who have to provide their forecast to MHCLG. So as I said before, I mean, it's really difficult to try to guess what's going to happen with the economy in the first part of next year, but certainly we've built in an increase in the number of people who will be claiming for October and the first part of November.
Thank you.
Can I just say this? Can I just say
can I just say, as long as it's to do with
with this? I'm just saying in terms of the scheme itself, we all have residents who are caught in this ghastly trap that this scheme is trying to alleviate, and that the consultation says the majority of people in the consultation said that they approved of the change. And if the CAB think it's a good idea, then who am I to say it isn't? But it's been we have ghastly. We all have ghastly.
Are you saying it isn't, Pat, or are you agreeing that it sounds like a good idea?
Well, if the people consulted and the CAB think it's a good idea, then it sounds like a good idea. It looks like a good idea, and we all have cases where people are tangled up, and we have officers working, day and night trying to sort this out. So I just want to find out if we really have a figure in the budget that would service this next year. So thank you for the answer.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from anyone else in the gallery, as it were? Can't see any on my chat, so I assume not. Thank you. So can we please, you can see on the screen in front of you what you're being asked to approve, which is the proposed banded income scheme for residents in receipt of universal credit eligible for council tax reduction. And it's also recommended the scheme is introduced from April 2021. So if I don't hear anything, I will assume that you will all agree. Thank you. Can we then please turn to paper A5? And there is a supplementary paper, just opening another screen, with slightly different recommendations. And do these recommendations actually that you've got on the screen in front of you add in the recommendations in the supplementary paper. So this is what we're being asked to think about tonight. So, Johnny, over to you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So this is our response to the planning white paper consultation, and we're asking members to approve it tonight. The first thing to say is to thank the Kensington Society and others for their foresight in encouraging us to take comments on the paper over the next week or so in case there's anything we miss or that comes up tonight. But I think the key messages that we want to talk about this evening are our desire to participate in digital pilots for local planning, and to welcome the government's aspiration to both go more online and also to build more homes. So we're very much looking forward to that. We are concerned, however, about housing targets. That there was a planning consultancy report a few weeks ago that forecasted our targets might become more than 3,000 homes a year, which I think, if that mutant algorithm emerged again, would be a big problem for the borough. I think one of the biggest things that we've done, though, over the last couple of years is try to put communities first in the planning process. So we're very concerned about community involvement being reduced if the current proposals are taken forward by government. We think better outcomes are reached when more of our residents are involved. And that shouldn't just be at the local plan formation sort of stage. It should be right the way through at the application stage too. So we're calling for that tonight. And another major plank of concern that perhaps we have is around local policy making. So things like amalgamations and our cultural areas and the kinds of things that really are bespoke and have been developed over a long period of time as development management policies that can help our borough grow in a way that's sympathetic to its unique surroundings and townscape. So I think that's all I'll say by introduction, but very happy for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Who would like to ask a question? Nothing in the chat?
I think Kim had a question.
Certainly, I would.
Sorry, I can see somebody's got their hands raised.
Well, I will come to a question after a long moan. In as much that, yes, Johnny, I agree with you. I support the aspiration in terms of producing and delivering more homes. But I have some, obviously some real worries with some of the provisions that are contained within this paper. I think the two just to pick on to is one, obviously, the reference to, we have committed to a charter for public participation. And I would very much hope that does override in terms of the application on some of this consultation in terms of engaging with our residents when coming on planning decisions. I think one which is of particular worry for me is on page 18, where there is an affordable housing threshold of 40 to 50 homes. And clearly very much part of our policy to ensure that we have affordable housing, given that we have a small number of sites ourselves as a council, is to put our developing applicants under pressure to deliver it on site. And most of our sites, what comes forward, tend to be smaller schemes. So that does worry me that this might cut out and encourage developers to put in something just below the maximum, so they don't give affordable homes. But my question is really, how are we going to lobby? I know on this to really make the points that I think would be quite detrimental to the council and to our residents if they're adopted.
Before I pass it to Johnny, I'll say that I had a meeting with the Secretary of State to go through this and tell him what I thought our response was, which is actually here, that our figure at the moment for housing is 448. To give us a target of over 3,000 would be, well nigh impossible. And so I hope that they would look again at the algorithm that they're using. I brought up the thing about community engagement, as you say, Kim. Community engagement runs through our everything that we do. So it would be very strange if we thought it was a good idea to halt that on planning. And of course, we have a lot of development management policies which are particular to this borough, which we fought long and hard to get. For example, the basement policy one. So I have made our views very clear. And Johnny, over to you. What other lobbying you've done?
Thanks, Elizabeth. You've stolen my thunder slightly, but
sorry.
I'll do my best to muddle on. Kim, those are very good points, and my introduction was only intended to outline a couple of our concerns. We have many more, and you've helpfully alighted on a couple. We will, as much as we can, resist anything that contradicts our Charter for Public Participation. It's something that we all want to see embedded in everything that the council does. So that is indeed a concern. And like you, I think it could mean potentially, and in many cases, the elimination of affordable housing if the thresholds are set this high. Because actually, when you go across the borough, there are probably only a small handful of sites that comfortably clear the 50-unit threshold. So again, our responses will make that point plain. I've spoken to our local MPs and to our GLA member about the white paper, and I know that Elizabeth's working hard. I'm talking to colleagues where I can on London councils as well.
Thank you.
Can I ask you something, Johnny, as well, about this? That obviously there's been a change in the paper because we've got this slightly different recommendation. So I'm assuming that you've had lots of people who suddenly not woken up to this, but suddenly thought, "Whoa, we'd like to also have contribute to this." Is that right? Organisations, or is it really just the Kensington Society, who very helpfully actually seem to we're in accord with most say, but there's additional stuff that they'd like to put in. Is that the?
Yeah. Well, without shining too bright a light on the Kensington Society, that they were the email that I received, and I was very happy to add more time for organisations and other groups on the council to contribute. I can see that there are members from across the chamber here tonight. I'm very happy to work with them over the next week, or 2 weeks, in fact, before we begin to start submitting our response to see if there's anything we can incorporate. And I've also reached out to our other amenity societies and major stakeholders to see if they have views they'd like us to feed in through our response.
Fantastic, thank you. But we don't need to do that. Tell me about that. It's a government consultation response that.
Sorry,
I was just going to say, so the government had a 12-week consultation period. So actually we were correct in just responding, but we're actually now reaching out to our societies and more people.
Yeah, I mean, it's atypical to sort of consult on a response to a government consultation, but we're very happy to do it because putting communities first is important to us. And actually, even before the Kensington Society's note, I had invited comments from both of our major amenity societies in order to try and get the widest possible range of views in putting together a response.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions? I can see.
Yes, I've got one.
Yes, Chairman.
No, I'm really sorry. We have to take things in order. So first of all, I'll ask the leadership team, then I'll ask the chair of the overview and scrutiny, and then I'll come to you. But I have noted that you'd wish to ask a question. So was that you, Emma?
Yes, indeed. Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks, Johnny. So I spent the first 3 years as my councillor probably dealing and talking with basements. So it's an issue. And I actually served on the Vanguard committee that did all the original work for a year, getting our excellent basement policy into place. If I've understood this document correctly, our policy is now at risk. And so I have two questions for you, Johnny. The first one is, do you think any of our residents do you think our residents have fully understood this? That's the first question. And then the second question is, what potential is there? Obviously this is a very local issue, but it is also local to Westminster and Camden and probably Islington as well. If I've got potential is there, and have you discussed it with those whom we might make common cause on this? Thanks.
Well, I think there's probably a bigger opportunity to lobby on the principle of retaining some development management policies. We're certainly trying to talk where we can to colleagues in London and elsewhere on the basement issue. But I think actually the principle of bespoke policy making that serves a local area is a really important one. So I think potentially that's an avenue by which we can more strongly make the case. On the point about whether residents have fully appreciated the consequences of this, I hesitate to say I'm sure our residents have assiduously read every dot and comma of the white paper, but I do think that there's still an opportunity for them to engage even more with what the government's proposing. I think it's something that will be of real concern to residents of Chelsea. It's a major issue. It's one that the council is already lobbying very hard against, and we will continue to do so. I'm certainly, as a resident of Chelsea, very alive to the threat of mega basements, and I know it's something on which the council has previously led. We hope to do so again.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the leadership team? I can't see if you're putting your hands up. If you could just put a Q in there.
Yes, Catherine, I've got a Q in the chat.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I just wanted to express my concerns as well about the CH5 policy about employment zones. I mean, I think it's just really, really important that we absolutely push back and keep hold of these in our borough. I mean, the same with Westminster and Camden. We have the highest land value, and we absolutely want to encourage businesses to come and operate in our borough, particularly now when we're worried about employment and we want local people to have jobs here. So I know that's noted here, and I'm sure you will be making a lot of noise about how we want to keep employment zones. And also just to express my concern again in this paper about the levy, the S106 levy, and the uncertainty about that, and as to how that will be used, because as you will all know, a lot of that is used for skills training. And it's just, couldn't be more important at the moment for us to have access to that money for skills training in the borough. So sorry, it's not really a question, it's more of a comment, Connie, and hoping that I'm sure you feel the same, but just reassurance that you'll be fighting on those two fronts. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think one of the key threads over the course of the last few months particularly has been that we want to protect livelihoods as well as lives. So the economy and our employment zones are absolutely critical to the council's mission. I know that Westminster, Camden, and I'm sure many others agree with us on this, on basements and on other issues. So I'm very sympathetic to that. One of the concerns that I might have outlined sooner is about the proposed infrastructure levy. Our concern is that if it's nationally set, if the rate is nationally set, the council stands to lose quite a significant amount of money. So although we welcome, I think, greater flexibility in how it can be spent, we are concerned that this could lead to us getting less money in and being able to deliver fewer infrastructure projects that are associated with big schemes. That's a point we make in our consultation response, and it's certainly one I will make when speaking to colleagues across London, MPs, and if I have the opportunity, ministers.
Okay, and I'm doing the same because I'm chair of Central London Forward, which is a grouping of the leaders of boroughs of Central London, and the response to the planning white paper, it will be at our next meeting of how we respond to Central London, so I can pick up many of these themes with my colleagues, my fellow leaders across the Central London zone. Are there any other comments or anything from the leadership team? Because otherwise I'll bring in Councillor Mary-Therese Rossi. Anyone else? No? Great. Mary-Therese.
Thank you, Elizabeth. This is a comment, really, Johnny, rather than a question. What concerns me most about the white paper, it's taking away decision making in planning from the elected members and from the community. And as we all know, our borough is unique in many ways, and a kind of one size fits all is not going to sit well with us. And I think it's going to cause problems down the line if it's adopted in its present form.
Yeah. I completely agree with you, Mary-Therese. That's a very helpful comment. And just to say, I'm looking forward also to Environment Select Committee next week, where we will receive further feedback from scrutiny members, and we'll look to incorporate that into our response.
Excellent. Councillor Bakhtiar.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I would like to echo what Councillor Mary-Therese Rossi said. This is a major concern. I've been a member of the Planning Committee over 6 years myself, and I've seen most of the cases united front by residents when it comes to major developments in the borough. So I think we are going to lose this if it goes. This is a very serious piece of legislation. And the 30-month period, this is another thing. It could sometimes, the developers could get automatic permission if 30 months lapse. So this is very serious. May I ask Councillor Talisisi to hold submitting our response until after the council meeting, to invite our residents and other groups, because we have very good and active members amongst our communities involved in this. Could we delay the response until after the council meeting, please?
Yes, I'm very happy to. I'm also happy to meet offline with any resident you'd like me to connect with and to discuss the response with you personally, Mo. I know you always make very sensible comments about planning issues.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. If there aren't any more comments, can I ask the leadership team to agree the recommendations on the screen in front of you, to approve the consultation response to government planning for the future white paper, but to note that should the council receive comments from local people or organisations, or indeed, as Councillor Thalasisis has just said, from the Environment Select Committee, which meets on the 12th of October, if we could have any of those comments by 9 AM on Monday the 26th, the lead member will, in conjunction with the Director of Planning and Place, make any necessary or desirable amendments to the response as approved by the leadership team before the response is formally submitted to the government in advance of the 29th of October deadline. Do we all agree that? I take your silence as agreed, so thank you very much. Could we please move on now to the next paper, which is the review of busking and street entertainment policy and PSPO. So Jem and Mr. Terry Oliver.
Thank you. Yes, so this is last year in July, we established the PSPO for busking, and we had intended that after a year we would review it and we would check that it was sort of fit for purpose and it was dealing with the residents' complaints. Obviously, in the meantime, events have overtaken us and this has been somewhat delayed. It is something that has been effective. The report will set out exactly how many complaints we have had. One thing that the report does make clear is that there's been an element of displacement with regards to busking, and we've found new areas now making complaints. And as such, as part of the review, we're looking to include a few more areas which are now suffering somewhat from nuisance busking. I should say we're not out to stop normal busking. This is really nuisance busking that our residents find repetitive. It's originally it had caused issues for the researchers at Imperial, and it's also causing disturbance for residents in their homes. So the report itself is fairly self-evident in what we're looking to do. We will be going out to a statutory consultation, and once the comments have come back in, it will be coming back for final approval. But it's something our residents have really asked for, and you know, we do have to continually keep it under review and make sure that it's fit for purpose.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Wheel. Or is it Wheel or Will? It just says Councillor W.
It's me, Elizabeth.
Fantastic.
It's good. Even the system can't tell the difference anymore now between me and Mary. We're so used to it, Mary. I get asked questions for you all the time. First, I want to say I really welcome this, not least because it's extending to Sloane Square, which is in my own ward. And as Jem knows full well, we've had a lot of complaints about a not tremendously talented sax player over the summer. But I suppose, so one observation, one question. I think probably we mean in the beginning of this paper, it talks about statute, and I think we probably mean statute there in the first bullet point.
It is indeed statutes, living statute. Yes, that's
fine. Okay, good. And then I suppose, and I don't want to be negative because I think this is such a good thing we've done, and thanks to officers because I know it's been so much work. But do we think the logical follow-on from this is that these people will just move to the next area and it's sort of cat and mouse, and we'll just keep moving the PSPOs or extending them?
Well, I think that's a fair comment, and obviously, as with any sort of enforcement, it has a habit of causing displacement. We knew this was a risk when we first established this. I think the comments from the people now living within the original zones are testament to the fact that it has worked. And yes, inevitably, some performers have moved on, and new complaints have started. But I think the overall number of complaints is certainly a lot lower than it was before. And as you'll see, most of the zones are around our tube stations, and there's only so many tube stations we have in the borough. So I think part of this is that it's a living policy, and we will have to keep checking because, you know, good busking is, we welcome that through our zone 2s. It's only really in zone 1 where all busking is prohibited. So, you know, we welcome good busking, basically.
Thank you. Councillor Rendell.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Jem, for giving us the opportunity to come in. I think it's been really good so far, and I think the initial success of this has, you know, proved itself. Just a couple of comments, really. First of all, I welcome that it's been extended to Sloane Square. I think as a frequent user of the square, obviously coming through home from work, etc., there was an increase of over 500% of complaints, and I can ascertain that was very much the case from what I witnessed. So it's good to see that we've extended that out to there as well. One of the questions I have is in regards to the extension of the PSPO to areas such as Gloucester Road, which I know is another big problem for busking. And I note that we have extended it to the west side, where the tube station is, but not to the east side of Gloucester Road, where buskers are also are prevalent, especially as I've gone through there in the past. Just wondering what the kind of the policy intent of that was, and if that could be reviewed perhaps going forward.
Thank you, Josh. Yes, I think it's fair to say that we're not necessarily slapping this down on the entire borough. It is, each area is thought through. And we do also have to have sort of formal complaints within an area to justify incorporating a PSPO. We can't do it in expectation of an event. It has to be done in response, and it also has to be done following on from comments from residents. So we don't want to prejudge where to put the zones. We do have to act within the complaints procedure. And just to put a bit of context of the Sloane Square one, there is a gentleman that plays saxophone. I believe he only knows 1 or 2 songs, but it goes on for many hours. And he plays outside of the window of a young autistic girl who's unable to sleep. It triggers issues with her, and it's really, these are the sort of detrimental impacts of busking that's unregulated and uncontrolled. I think there is clearly a human element to all of this as well.
Thank you. Councillor Wheel.
Yes, I just wanted to add in support to Josh that, the PSPO in South Kensington has just had such a wonderful effect. And I used to, it had just become ridiculous, the number of sort of anguished calls that we got, and our feeling of sort of uselessness that we couldn't do anything to help residents. And the PSPO has just been a really, really good solution to it, and an example of innovation. And I'm very, very happy to see the good benefits of it spread around the borough. So I thoroughly support this paper.
Thank you. Yes, and you can see from Appendix 2 the impact statements of just how awful it has been for some residents to have people busking outside their windows, whether they're working or they're trying to sleep, or as you say, the chap with the saxophone playing under the windows all day long, and certainly every day bar exceptional weather. So I think it's something that certainly as a leadership team we really, really would welcome, and it's us not only as a leadership team but as ward councillors. Are there any other questions or any comments from the leadership team? Otherwise, I will ask if there's anyone else in the gallery, as it were, if they want to ask anything. I don't see any questions, so.
Right. Could I just?
You.
Could I say something?
Sure.
No, just to say I have a great deal of sympathy for our residents, because I think the thing about busking is the standard is incredibly variable. But if you have somebody outside, your window playing the same tune over and over again badly, I can just see that it would really drive you mad. So I welcome this, and I think it's really good.
Excellent. Okay, if there are no other comments, can we please agree the recommendations on the screen, which is to approve the commencement of a 6-week statutory public consultation on the proposed PSPO's variations, which have been identified by the review. And once we've got the consultation findings, they'll be used to update the Busking Street entertainment policy and PSPOs. Then it'll come back for formal approval by the leadership team at a later date. So if we're happy with that, let us agree it. Thank you. Now we're going to go to A7, which is the waste collection and street cleansing contract. Now there is a part B to this, which discusses some of the terms. So we would like to, in fact, not only would we like to, we resolve to exclude the press and public by virtue of the private nature of the business to be transacted, because it involves information relating to the financial and business affairs of particular persons, including the authority. So what we're going to do is we are going to go into private session now. So we're going to leave this particular Teams meeting. We're going to a separate room to discuss it, and then we will come back to discuss item A7 with the benefit of having previously discussed the exempt appendix. So if we could all leave this room now. because this is a really, really, really important contract, and I think we need to understand exactly how the negotiations have gone.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I totally agree, and I'd start by saying thank you to our officers who have been working on this for just for night and day, and also Eunomia who have helped us get this far. It really has been a detailed process. It's been a worthwhile process, and they've dealt with it during a global pandemic when they've had other calls on their time. So it really is, as we all know, it's a universal service that all of our residents benefit from. It's one of those few things that everybody has an interest in. And certainly when we went to consultation with our residents and our councillors, everybody praised the contract. There was almost near universal support for the quality of our existing contract and a keen willingness to make sure that it remained exactly as high spec as we had. In fact, going through the process, we've been able to improve the quality of the contract whilst also keeping an eye on the budget. It's absolutely key that we do push down on our big contracts, and of which this is absolutely one of the biggest. We've been able to really improve the quality. We're adding a dedicated sort of graffiti removal team, removing of chewing gum, jet washing of our high streets. There's also additional technological improvements. We're addressing our Vision Carbon Zero and our climate emergency. We're also adding the London Living Wage. So it's an awful lot of variable items that have gone in to a service that we really have to get right, because it is something that our residents really do value. And I am really pleased that the competition was so fierce. We did go through a number of bids. It ended between two companies, and it has been Suez has become the preferred bidder, and we're here tonight to make that decision. We've really the officers, I don't want to take too much credit. The officers have really made sure that the bids themselves, even though Suez is the incumbent, they really went through everything to make sure that we don't have any hiccups coming next year, and that we do have a continuation of such a highly valued service. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay. Before I take any questions with you, I noticed Councillor Mason seems to be trying to get into the Part B meeting. So if somebody technical could guide him back to Part A where we are, that would be very helpful. Before we start, Jim, would you mind if I ask one of the officers, probably Sue Harris as the Executive Director? We noted that actually Veolia has bought Suez, or is bidding for it, or taking over part of it. And I just want to have her reassurance, and I want it on record, that this doesn't disturb this contract.
Thank you, Councillor. So yes, I can confirm that there was an announcement today that Veolia has bought 29.9% of Suez. And I did speak to the Chief Executive of Suez today, and he did confirm that the bid that they have submitted and we are considering tonight, there is no difference now than there was to yesterday in their commitment to all of the detail in that contract. And indeed, we did have a meeting with legal colleagues, and they confirmed that as well.
Thank you for making that clear. Now, what questions are there from colleagues? I can't see any in the queue chat room, but I'm sure there must be some, because this is such an important contract and it's worth so much money. Maybe we've silenced everybody because it's such a comprehensive paper. And can I add my thanks to I can see a hand going up, but I have no idea whose hand it is. Do you want to just jump in if it is someone on the leadership team and it's your hand? Maybe it's an Orwell. Can I ask something then?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, who's that?
That's Mary, I think.
Mary.
I just wanted to make a more general comment about procurement, really, which is that I think this is a really good outcome and we can all be very pleased with, but it's one that I hope that we'll be able to replicate in future across a range of other contracts, because what we've got here is a very significant saving, but also an enhancement of service. And as times get harder, we do need to make these contracts work for us in a way that I think the team really have done here. So congratulations to them, but we need more of the same across the council, and I hope we will have that in the coming years.
Thank you. Jem, could you just expand on 1.5, please? Because I thought that sounded really good. Part of how you're sort of modernising the rubbish collection so that to help us become a carbon neutral council.
Absolutely, yes. So obviously, given our commitment to going carbon neutral for 2030, we had to make sure we built that in to our contracts. The development of electric bin lorries is still at the beginning stages. There are production-ready models, but they are quite expensive. We did test one in the borough recently, and we found that actually by being silent, it would offer us ability to even do earlier collections when residents may be sleeping. And it also would mean that they wouldn't be caught up, firstly, in the pollution that they generate, but also in their ability to do collections at different times of the day when there's less traffic around. Sewers themselves also have a in-cab technology now, which will be making sure that their vehicles are sort of following time and mapping out their routes to be as efficient as possible. Obviously, as the incumbent, they do know the borough quite well, but it's really important that we do use digital processes and tracking to make sure that our vehicles aren't getting caught in traffic, burning diesel, whilst we make the transition to an electric fleet with the necessary infrastructure upgrades to our depots as well.
Yeah, can you just expand on that, where it says develop Tavistock depot into a recycling and reuse hub? What's that saying?
Yes, so this would be
what it is on the tin, but perhaps you could just what exactly that means.
Defer that one to Terry, as he'll have the operational knowledge on that one.
Thank you, Jem. Yeah, so with the new contract, what we want to try and do is encourage a lot more reuse of materials. So that's looking potentially at the bulky waste collection that we have, making sure a lot more of that actually is reused rather than disposed of. So what we aiming to do with the Tavistock hub is increase the amount of recycling that goes on in the market. So we really want to try and green Portobello and Goulburn Market. And we're introducing a food waste collection on the market. So that some of the food waste storage will be based at Tavistock. And then there will be much more of a focus on the reuse, as I said as well. So we try and gather most of the kind of reusable bulky waste and then use that as a distribution point to kind of the third sector where they can actually upgrade that equipment and give it to residents who may be in need of it.
Fantastic. I think you have a flurry of questions which come in. Is that T? Yes. Councillor Balaciti. Taylor Smith, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you very much indeed. Actually, you stole one of my questions, and but I've got another one. I found another one as we go through, and I was only trying to be kind because I think it's an excellent contract.
Really good.
You know, we've got ULEZ vehicles, and the one I was going to ask was all about London living wage and local apprenticeships, but you've got that in. So I suppose it's obviously it's a contract for 8 years with an option to extend. Does that tie in exclusively as far as the property in Tavistock, Pembroke, or is there would there be a possibility if they wanted to relocate or we wanted them to relocate that we could do so without having to renegotiate the contract?
John?
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying that there is a concurrent agreement for the depots, and it has been good for us to value exactly what those depots are worth to our waste teams, because up to this point it's been rather difficult to quite ascertain the benefit of having a depot within the borough. We can understand it anecdotally, but this tender process really put it into an economic context. And then Terry, if you want to answer on the terms of the lease itself.
Sure. Yeah. So all the depots are included within the lease. Sorry, the leases are included in the contract. So we can make changes if we need to, but it's very clearly stated within this contract that we will hopefully be signing where the depots are, what functions they have. So the 8+8 is more to do with the lifespan of the vehicles. So on average, a vehicle is kind of 8 years usable life. So that's why we've kind of go for the 8+8, but over the lifetime of the contracts, there is some limited opportunity, I'd say, to look at the depots and any kind of changes to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Randall?
Thank you, Leader. More of a comment, really. I just want to congratulate Councillor Kamali on a excellent paper and an excellent recommendation to have this new contract. It has committed to our manifesto commitment we committed to in 2018, and pleased to see that it's come. We just keep up the same level of service, but for cheaper as well. So I just want to commend Councillor Kamali and his portfolio for achieving something.
Thank you. And Councillor Coates?
Sorry, just coming off. Yes, actually, I was again. Kim has now stolen my thunder. I was going to say that how much I welcome the London living wage. I know it's something we've been discussing for a long time to be able to do, and it has been an expensive thing to do. So it's still really impressive that you've managed to get the contract in cheaper and include the London living wage and also the community benefit plan of funds. So that's very, very welcome to increase employment opportunities. But this is really a question for Terry, because you rather tantalisingly suggest that the food waste collection pilot will be extended. Where possible, but it says where possible. As somebody who lives in one street on from where it exists now, when will we know where it will be extended to?
It's a good question. So we want to look at that within year one of the contract, if we can. So as the report says, we made permanent the collection in the north and the collection in the south. We're looking at including markets as well as food waste collection in markets and a commercial food waste service. So depending on the spare capacity of that there might be some spare capacity that we can use to increase some of the residential collections, but overall there is a real big interest now, and a lot of residents are getting in contact with us saying they want to have a food waste collection. So it is something we need to look at, and it is the finances, to be fair, which is a big restriction on that, because it can be quite an expensive operation to run.
I would also add there's also the environmental impact. It's very good to recycle food waste, but if you're sending a large diesel vehicle to go and collect it, the benefits to the recycling may not be quite the same as the emissions that you're generating in that endeavour. And I think I just also want to add, I know we thank the officers, but I think I want to thank on the record the bin men themselves. They didn't miss a single collection during a global pandemic. They kept our streets, I think, the cleanest I've ever seen them. In Kensington, they took the opportunity when the streets were quiet to clean them down, wash them down. So once again, just public thanks to the teams that made that all possible.
I think that's a very good point, because certainly I was approached by people in the street who said how amazing it was at a time when everyone was locked down and everyone was feeling really fed up and gloomy, to come out and just see absolutely pristine streets just sort of lifted the spirit. So I would also like to put on record my thanks to the binmen, who just did the most fantastic job. Can I just ask one thing, Terry, before we open this up to other questions? Given that we live in very uncertain times and we don't know whether some people, our population might be diminishing or increasing, or what's happening to businesses because of COVID, and our finances are more precarious than they were, how much sort of ability is there for us to have any contract variation within this, should we say in 5 years' time that our circumstances have have completely changed. Is there much ability to do that?
There's an annual review process built into the contract where both parties can kind of review the contract, see what's working, what isn't, and propose changes, which again have to be agreed between both parties. There's a change protocol as well that's been built into the contract. So there is that flexibility to change, because we are in uncertain times. So we need to make sure that contract was flexible enough to deal with that.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Rossi, is that a question from you, or is that from the last meeting? Nothing? Are you there, Councillor Marie-Therese Rossi? Do you wish to ask a question?
It's on mute.
Oh. Maybe not then.
Sorry, I was on mute.
Ah.
So just to say quickly, I'd like to thank Councillor Kamali and the whole environment team and the bin man. This is a very important contract. It affects all of our residents, and we always score quite highly on resident satisfaction for this kind of thing. And also during the pandemic, I think bin man did a really good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? If not,
well,
sorry.
I think my hand is up, or was up anyway. If I could say, I have a question, but can I also say the bin men do an absolutely fantastic job and always have done, and particularly during COVID. And I speak to them on the streets, and they do an amazing job for us. But can I also say that I welcome the commitment to paying the London living wage, which, let's not forget, is £10.75 an hour, and my group of course campaigned for 6 years to get this in place, and we were told by Councillor Wheel at the time that we'd have to wait until each contract came up for renewal. But can I ask, the commitment is here in this paper, but when the contract is actually signed, will the contract, will it say explicitly in legal terms that sewers will pay the £10.75 an hour to all, at least to all their workers? I mean, it's fine in this paper, but
thank you.
Are they actually committing to that, to put the stamp on it on paper?
Thank you. Terry, could you answer that question, please?
Yeah, that's legally, that will be in the contract. So from the 1st of April, everyone will be on London living wage or more.
Thank you.
That's great.
Okay. So again, I'd just like to reiterate what everyone said. Thank you very much, Councillor Kamali. Great job, well done. And thank you very much, Terry Oliver, and really to all your team, because this is so important to all of our residents. So can we go ahead and approve, please, leadership team? What you see?
Sorry, Councillor Campbell.
Yeah.
Have you, sorry, I just wanted to check. Have you mentioned the referral from the Environment Select Committee?
No, I haven't. Thank you very much indeed. That had slipped my mind. We have had, thank you very much. We have had something from the Environment Select Committee, which you should have all seen, which is their comments, because they've looked at this. And it commends it. It says the Select Committee is impressed by the thoroughness of the work that's been done. It believes that the new contract will provide the quality service that residents want at a reduced cost and in a more environmentally sustainable way. It also incorporates arrangements for collection from social housing. It lauds the flexibility that's been built into the contract, taking into account any future changes to vehicle requirements due to electrification, and any future changes to technology of packaging and waste collection arising from any new requirements asked for by central government. And it says it commends the contract award and like to again place on record its recognition of the excellent work carried out by the officers responsible. So thank you to our clerk for reminding me of that supplementary paper. So the Environment Select Committee have looked at that, they're happy. Judging by the comments this evening, the leadership team is happy. So can we please agree to the recommendations on the screen in front of you, which is approving the award of the waste collection and street cleansing contract to Sewers for an initial period of 8 years, with an option to extend for a further 8 years, but not to exceed the maximum contract length of 16 years. And the estimated contract sum is £13,510,243 per annum before indexation to current year staffing rates. And can we, in addition to that, approve the grant of the 5 separate leases to Sewers? Okay, in respect to the council's depots as detailed in Appendix Part B to this report. So if I don't hear anything to the contrary, that's what we will have just approved. Thank you very much indeed. If there is no other business, is there any other business? I haven't heard of any, so I'm assuming there isn't any other urgent business, and I wish you a very good evening, and thank you all for coming this evening.